Yes, it's something that you either have or not. And every one of us is different. And I've seen a lot of people who
What did Alex Zanardi really say just before everything changed again?
surprise themselves with a very similar reaction to what happened to me. But instead of asking myself, how am I going to live
Not
with
in
no
a dramatic final speech, but in a calm, almost reflective podcast conversation, he hinted at something that now feels impossible to ignore. He talked about risk, about why some people never walk away from speed even after losing everything. And that's what makes his story so different. Because if you go back to 2001, the moment that should have ended it all, you'll understand why those words hit harder today. At the peak of his career in American open-wheel racing, Zanardi was doing what he did best, pushing limits. Then, in a split second, a catastrophic crash changed his life forever. Both of his legs were gone. The world didn't just see an accident, it saw the end of a racer. But Zanardi didn't. Instead of stepping away, he did something no one expected. He rebuilt his life around competition again, not as a driver this time, but as a handcyclist. And somehow he didn't just return, he dominated. Multiple Paralympic gold medals, global recognition, a comeback story that didn't feel real. Which raises a question. Why would someone who already paid the highest price for speed still choose to live on the edge? That's exactly what he touched on in that final podcast. He didn't sound reckless, he sounded clear, focused, almost like he had already answered that question for himself. For him, it was never about danger, it was about feeling alive, about testing limits most people wouldn't even approach. And that mindset followed him until the very end. In June 2020, during a handcycling relay event on an open Italian road, something went wrong. A collision with a truck, sudden, violent, no time to react. The same man who had once survived the impossible was now facing another life-threatening moment. He was rushed into surgery with severe head injuries. The updates that followed were unclear, then quiet, and then silence. What makes this even more haunting is how closely it connects back to that podcast. Because he had already explained it. Why he kept going, why stopping was never an option. Why even after 2001 he refused to choose safety over purpose. People close to him later described him as someone who never saw himself as a victim. His family often spoke about his mindset not driven by fear but by curiosity, by the need to see how far he could go. And the racing world noticed too. Tributes from fellow drivers and athletes didn't just focus on his achievements, they focused on his mentality. Words like unbreakable, fearless, and one of a kind kept coming up, not because of what he won but because of how he lived. And maybe that's the real story here. Not just what happened, but why it happened the way it did. Because Zanardi wasn't chasing danger. He was chasing something else entirely. Something he tried to explain in that final conversation, something that still leaves people thinking long after hearing it. And maybe that's why his story doesn't feel like it ended. It feels like a question. How far would you go to feel truly alive?